I spoke yesterday and the day before about how I think it is powerful to articulate with your lips what you have in your head. And I talked about how the power is in slowing down your thoughts so that you can sort them out. I also talked about the power of speaking it publicly so it's stronger, so that you develop a support system. There's another real power for me in speaking your thoughts, and that is you can begin to hear them. It's the same power in writing your thoughts, that you can begin to see them. And until you can hear them and see them, it's hard to know when they're off base. That's what we talked about, the conversation space, that you start to pay attention to your conversations. Whether you're talking about all the problems and only a few solutions, switch it around. If you're talking mostly about the past and a little bit about the future, balance it out. If your content of your conversation is all about stuff and other people, balance it out with conversation about yourself and about your relationship with the other. Remember all that? We've talked about all those ways to manage your conversations. What you say, what you write, therefore what you think. Well, today I want to talk about another one, which is what I call the ladder of effective speaking. And that is that I believe we can use our language to take us to places that are far more self-responsible. We can use our language to move us out of being a victim. Because a lot of times in our lives, we operate like we're not responsible, like we didn't have anything to do with it. It was somebody else that did it to us. And generally, it's our parents, our children, our spouse, our community, the media. It's somebody that did it to us. But I believe that what we can learn to do is to move from being that victim in life to being more self-generative. Psychologists refer to this as an external locus of control versus an internal locus of control. Somebody with a high external locus of control looks like this. They're going, oh, life did it to me. You know some people like this, right? I mean, I know you've never done this, but you probably know people that when they get into a pickle, they just, oh, well, you'd be here too if you grew up in the culture that I grew up. Or, well, you'd be here too if you had my parents. You know, my parents couldn't even parent. Or, well, if you were married to my spouse, you'd not be happy either. Or, if you had my kids, well, or, if you worked where I worked, it'd be no fun for you either. My boss, you've heard some of those things? Well, that's called being a victim. It's called blaming others for the life situation that you find yourself. I think there's an alternative to that. It's to be more self-responsible, more self-generative. It's to ask yourself, in times of trouble, a very unusual question. This: how did I create this? That's the unusual question. What did I do to manifest this in my life? Whatever it is. Now, this is also a great question in times of celebration. Because often in times of celebration we say things like, well, it was just luck. Or, well, I know, it was good, but it was from all the other people around me. Now, I know that's nice and modest, but it's not very self-responsible. What I'm recommending in times of celebration and in times of trouble is that you ask yourself, how did I create this? And then move your language up this ladder of effective speaking. Just notice you're speaking. And I believe that most of the time when you're down there in that victim mud and wanting to go up there toward the sun, did you notice how that sun went up there?
That's good.
I thought that was really clever. When you're down in that victim mud, generally you have this language of obligation. It sounds like this. Well, I need to. Somebody ought to. Well, I must. I should. I have to. I ought to. they ought to, they should, they must, they need to. It's all this language, these words that point to being controlled by someone else. What I'm recommending is you just pay attention. And when you hear yourself say, I need to, I should, I have to, I must, just alter your speaking and start up this ladder. Now, you do this, by the way. I've heard you in the last 3 days. This is how a lot of you talk about what you have to do next, about what you really should do now, about the right way. But it's not the right way for you, necessarily. What you're talking about is the right way for others. Somebody that told you, someplace that you read it. I'm suggesting that you trust yourself. Well, here's the way out, is when you hear yourself do that, move up one rung to the language of possibility. And that's when you say things like, well, I might, I could, it's one option, maybe, I'll try. Now, I know a lot of people think that words like I'll try aren't very powerful. I think they're way more powerful than I need to. I might opens up the possibility of might not. So for example, if I say, well, I really ought to write her a thank you note. I mean, she gave me that, I really ought to write her a thank you note. That feels so heavy to me. That feels like, I don't know, repressive. I ought to because somebody told me I should. Now, if I just move one rung up the ladder, I say, well, I might write a thank you note, which opens up the possibility that I might not. You say, yeah, but you should. Oh, now, don't should on me. You won't should on me, I won't should on you. I don't want to be in that space of obligation. I want to be in the space of desire, of possibility, of options, of freedom. Now, all of a sudden, once you've gone from obligation to possibility, you are in the light, and you're out of the mud. And there's more rungs to go. I want to outline a few others. David.
I guess that brings up a question for me because we had an instance at my home where we signed up for a soccer league, and long story short, they sent a check back saying, we didn't give them a check, but they sent a check and said, we can't get you in this time, we'll get you in next time. And I told my son, you need to write them a note, thank you, this isn't my money, and do this.
Right.
Now I'm feeling bad for telling him that he had this obligation to do this the right way. And what do you say to that?
Good. Stay tuned. Yeah, because we just went up the next rung of the ladder. So one possibility is, you could say, look, you should pay that money back. You should write a thank you note. Or you could say to your son, one thing you could do, if you haven't thought of it, is just go ahead and send that money back. And send it, maybe even send a thank you note with it. That's one thing you could do. So you're giving him an option. You're giving him freedom. You're giving him a new possibility. Stay tuned. Now just wait, just hold on. Let me get to the top of this ladder here. We'll get there. I'm going to carry your example forward along with my thank you note example.